Just hours ago on Saturday, January 17th, President Trump took to Truth Social with an announcement that left European capitals scrambling. He declared that starting February 1st, 8 European countries will face a 10% tariff on all goods exported to the United States. And if that wasn't enough, these tariffs will increase to 25% on June 1st, unless, and here's the kicker, Denmark agrees to the complete and total purchase of Greenland. The countries hit by this tariff bomb are Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Finland. Notice something? These aren't adversaries. These are some of America's closest NATO allies, countries that have stood shoulder to shoulder with the U.S. for over 7 decades. In his Truth Social post, Trump argued that these nations have benefited from U.S. protection and favorable trade treatment for years, and now it's time for them to give back by agreeing to sell Greenland. He claimed that Denmark's defenses are woefully inadequate, saying they have, quote, 2 dog sleds as protection, one added recently. He warned that China and Russia want Greenland and that only the United States can protect it. But what triggered this specific tariff threat? Well, in recent days, these very same European countries have been deploying military personnel to Greenland at Denmark's request. Germany, France, Norway, Sweden, and others have sent troops for what they're calling a reconnaissance mission and Arctic defense training. Trump sees this as a dangerous provocation, calling it a very dangerous situation for the safety, security, and survival of our planet. So why is Trump so obsessed with Greenland? Let me give you some context. Greenland is the world's largest island, covering over 836,000 square miles. It's 80% covered in ice, has a population of just 56,000 people, and is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. It sits between the United States and Russia, right at the gateway to the Arctic Ocean. First, there's the military angle. Greenland is absolutely critical for Arctic security. The U.S. already has a military presence there with Patuxent Space Base, formerly known as Thule Air Force Base, established under a 1951 agreement with Denmark. This base is vital for early warning systems and missile defense. Trump has repeatedly mentioned his Golden Dome missile defense system, and Greenland is essential for that vision. With climate change opening up new Arctic shipping routes as ice melts, Greenland's location becomes even more valuable. A northwest passage through the Arctic could dramatically shorten shipping times between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, and whoever controls Greenland has enormous influence over that route. The rare earth bonanza. But here's where it gets really interesting. Beneath Greenland's ice lies what could be one of the most valuable mineral deposits on Earth. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, Greenland holds approximately 36 million tons of rare earth elements, with about 1.5 million tons currently considered economically viable. Greenland ranks around 8th globally in rare earth reserves, and with further exploration, it could potentially have the world's second-largest reserves after China. Why rare earths matter? Now, if you're wondering why these rare earth elements are such a big deal, here's the answer. They're absolutely critical for modern technology and defense systems. We're talking about materials essential for electric vehicle batteries, wind turbines, high-performance magnets, smartphones, military equipment, and advanced weapons systems. And here's the problem. China currently dominates about 90% of global rare earth processing. The United States is dangerously dependent on China for these strategic materials. Beyond rare earths, Greenland has massive deposits of graphite, essential for battery production, uranium, which is one of the world's largest deposits, copper for electrical infrastructure, and various other strategic minerals including zinc, gold, silver, tungsten, and gallium. In June 2025, the European Union even designated Greenland's Amitsoq graphite project as a strategic project under its Critical Raw Materials Act. China has been trying to expand its Arctic footprint for years through what it calls the Polar Silk Road. In 2018, China controversially referred to itself as a near-Arctic state, and it's been attempting infrastructure investments and resource acquisitions in the region. Most of these projects have been blocked due to security concerns, but China's interest in Greenland remains intense. Trump's national security advisor has been explicit. This is about critical minerals. This is about natural resources. Denmark and Greenland have made their position crystal clear. Greenland is not for sale. Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen met with Secretary of State Marco Rubio this week and told reporters afterward, "It's clear that the president has this wish of conquering over Greenland, but emphasized that this is not in the interest of the kingdom." Greenland's Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen has been firm as well, stating that Greenland belongs to its people. A poll from January 2025 showed that 85% of Greenlanders oppose joining the United States, with only 6% in favor. The people have spoken and they want self-determination, not annexation. The European response has been one of solidarity. A joint statement from the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, and the United Kingdom declared, "Greenland belongs to its people." Denmark warned that any attack on Greenland would effectively end NATO, a sobering reminder of what's at stake. Today, as Trump made his tariff announcement, thousands of people took to the streets in Denmark and Greenland. In Copenhagen, Aarhus, Aalborg, and Odense, protesters waved Greenlandic flags and carried signs reading, "Hands off Greenland." In Greenland's capital, Nuuk, about 5,000 people gathered for a rally, an enormous turnout considering the island's total population is only 56,000. They braved freezing temperatures, rain, and icy streets to send a message. Their signs read, "Yankee go home," and "Greenland is already great." Interestingly, even within the United States, there's significant opposition. A bipartisan delegation of U.S. senators and representatives traveled to Copenhagen this weekend to reassure Denmark and Greenland. Democratic Senator Chris Coons, who led the delegation, called Trump's tempo of statements around Greenland not constructive. He expressed deep respect for Greenland's indigenous people and emphasized that Denmark is almost no better ally to the United States within NATO. Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski was also part of the delegation, showing this isn't simply partisan opposition. The group made it clear that many members of Congress do not support any effort to acquire Greenland by force or coercion. The larger geopolitical implications are staggering. This represents one of the most serious tests of NATO unity in decades. We're talking about the potential unraveling of 70 years of transatlantic security cooperation. As one analyst put it, if the United States starts threatening core NATO allies with economic warfare over territorial demands, why would any country trust American security guarantees? Let's talk about what these tariffs actually mean economically. The countries Trump is targeting include some of America's largest trading partners. Germany, France, and the UK alone represent hundreds of billions of dollars in annual trade with the United States. The US already has a trade framework agreement with the European Union capping tariffs at 15% and an agreement with the UK capping tariffs at 10%. It's unclear whether these new tariffs would void those deals or be added on top. What Americans will pay. Here's the thing about tariffs that often gets lost in political rhetoric. American consumers and businesses pay them, not foreign countries. These tariffs will likely increase prices for everything from German automobiles and machinery to French wine and British pharmaceuticals. We're talking about aircraft parts, medical equipment, industrial machinery, and consumer goods. The timing is particularly awkward because the Trump administration has been battling widespread cost of living concerns. Just last November, the administration had to walk back some food tariffs because of consumer pressure. Trump has also been pushing for a 10% cap on credit card interest rates and ordering government entities to buy mortgage bonds to drive down rates. Now he's imposing tariffs that could drive prices higher on a range of products. But here's the ironic part. Even if the US somehow acquired Greenland, actually extracting those precious minerals wouldn't be easy or quick. Greenland's harsh climate, lack of infrastructure, and difficult geology have prevented anyone from building successful rare earth mines so far. The island has minimal roads, no railways, limited ports, and extreme weather conditions that make year-round mining operations extraordinarily challenging. Industry experts are calling Trump's Greenland strategy absurd from a practical standpoint. Even if rare earths were successfully mined in Greenland, they would still need to be sent to China for processing because China controls 90% of global refining capacity. As one analyst put it, even if you mined it, then you have to send it to China for processing. In the medium to long term, it makes nearly no difference. The United States actually has its own rare earth reserves of about 1.9 million tons, comparable to Greenland's proven reserves of 1.5 million tons. If the US wanted rare earths, it could simply develop its own continental deposits. The challenge isn't finding the minerals, it's building the processing infrastructure outside of China. Local opposition to mining? There's also fierce local opposition in Greenland to mining operations. In 2021, Greenland's parliament passed legislation restricting uranium byproducts, which directly affected major rare earth projects, since uranium is often found alongside rare earth deposits. The Kvanefjeld project, one of Greenland's largest rare earth developments, was effectively shut down because of these restrictions and local environmental concerns. This isn't the first time the idea of purchasing Greenland has been floated. During Trump's first term in 2019, he expressed interest in buying Greenland, which was met with bewilderment and rejection by Denmark. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen called the idea absurd, which reportedly offended Trump and led to him canceling a state visit to Denmark. But the idea has historical precedent. In 1946, the United States actually offered to buy Greenland from Denmark for $100 million, which Denmark declined. The U.S. has long recognized Greenland's strategic importance, which is why the 1951 defense agreement establishing a U.S. military base was such a priority during the Cold War. What's different in 2026 is the urgency around critical minerals and Arctic competition. China and Russia are both expanding their Arctic activities. Russia has been building up its northern fleet and developing Arctic infrastructure. China, despite being nowhere near the Arctic geographically, has declared itself a stakeholder in Arctic affairs and has been pursuing research expeditions and investment opportunities. The Supreme Court wildcard. There's also a legal wildcard in play. The U.S. Supreme Court has been considering cases about the extent of presidential authority to impose tariffs unilaterally. Trump and his team have been using emergency declarations to justify sweeping tariffs. The court has had two opportunities recently to issue a verdict on Trump's tariff authority, but hasn't ruled yet. Depending on how the Supreme Court decides, Trump's ability to impose these kinds of sweeping, country-specific tariffs could be limited. So, what happens next? Several scenarios are possible. 1. This could be Trump's negotiating tactic, using the threat of tariffs to pressure European countries into accepting increased U.S. military presence or strategic partnerships in Greenland. The tariffs might never actually be implemented if some face-saving compromise is reached. 2. The tariffs go into effect on February 1st as threatened, triggering a serious trade war with America's closest allies. The European Union could retaliate with its own tariffs on American goods, escalating the situation into a full-blown economic conflict. 3. The Supreme Court could rule against Trump's broad tariff authority, limiting his ability to follow through on this threat. 4. Congressional opposition could mount, with even Republicans joining Democrats to restrict the president's unilateral tariff powers, or to explicitly prevent military or economic coercion regarding Greenland. What we're witnessing is a fundamental shift in how the United States relates to its traditional allies. For decades, the Western alliance was built on shared values, mutual defense commitments, and respect for sovereignty. The idea of the United States threatening NATO allies with economic warfare to force territorial concessions would have been unthinkable even a few years ago. The critical mineral supply chain issue is real. Western dependency on China for rare earths and other strategic materials is a legitimate national security concern. But the question is whether threatening close allies and attempting to acquire Greenland against the will of its people is the right solution, or whether a cooperative approach with European partners to develop alternative supply chains makes more sense.